내일 같은. 얘는 어디서 속에서 크죠. 얘를 해주고. 예. It's 10:30. Good morning. Today is 446 seminar of OSEAN, and from now on I'll start today's seminar. The title of the paper is Strategies to Reduce the Global Carbon Footprint of Plastics. It's very new, relatively new thoughts, and it has big scale and big scope. But I think the author is author is a masterpiece of this field, and he contracted the complicated contents of related articles and many informations and make a clear abstract. The paper looks like abstract for his a lot of work, and the paper looks like this. It has a few pages and abstract. Figure 1. I'll skip the explanation now. I go to my PPT and explain of the contents. Figure 1 is global life cycle of greenhouse gas emissions of conventional plastics in 2015 by sector, by polymers. Figure 2 is global life cycle of greenhouse emissions of plastics under various scenarios. I'll explain later too. And figure 3 is greenhouse emissions breakdown of life cycle stages of plastics. It means plastic production stage and conversion stage and end of life stage. For each stage, how many greenhouse gas is emitted from the life cycle. I'll explain this later. That's all, and some methods here. And it has supplementary here. I have to switch from my PPT to supplementary tables because it helps for my explanation a lot. I'll go to my PPT. The title is Strategies to Reduce the Global Carbon Footprint of Plastics. And the abstract tells about the main point of this paper. I read this abstract. Over the past 4 decades, global plastics production has quadrupled. It's just between 1980 to 2020. If we go back to 1950, it becomes 20 times or 25 times like that, because now we have 400 million tons of production, but 1950s we just had 2 million tons of plastics. Then it means 20 times. Anyway, over the past 4 decades, it has quadrupled. If this trend were to continue, the GHG emissions, greenhouse gas emissions from plastics would reach 15% of the global carbon budget by 2050. Strategies to mitigate the life cycle GHG emissions of plastics, however, have not been evaluated on a global scale. Here, we compile a dataset covering 10 conventional and 5 bio-based plastics. Is a hypothesis, and their life-scale GHG emissions under various mitigation strategies. Our results show that the global life cycle GHG emissions of conventional plastics were 1.7 gigaton of CO2 equivalents in 2015, which would grow to 6.5 gigaton CO2e by 2050 under the current trajectory. However, aggressive application of renewable energy, recycling, and the demand management strategies in concert has the potential to keep 2050 emissions comparable to 2015 levels. It means 1.7 gigaton of CO2 equivalent. In addition, replacing fossil fuel feedstock with biomass can further reduce emissions and achieve an absolute reduction from the current level. It means fossil fuel resin pellet is switched to biomass-based plastics. Our study demonstrates the need for integrating energy, material recycling, and the demand management strategies to curb growing life cycle GHG emissions from plastics. It means we need aggressive strategies to be implemented to achieve drastic reduction of GHG emissions. It's like we already studied breaking plastic waves, and recently we saw another papers, pollution to solution. This kind of studies are based on modeling, and they compiled a lot of data and papers and informations from various sectors, and they extracted important point and set prediction model, and they suggest the result of the prediction. That's the point. And the result is concocting some aggressive strategies will be needed. Various strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from plastics. Strategies to promote bio-based plastics have been initiated by Europe Commission and countries such as Japan and Korea. The chemical industry as a whole is responsible for about 15% of global anthropogenic greenhouse emissions. In 2017, the total global production of bio-based plastics reached 2.05 million tons and is projected to grow by 20% over the next 5 years. It means the production of bio-based plastics will grow further from now on, but we don't know how much it will grow. But for prediction, they set goal. I'll show you later. 1% plastic production of bio-based plastics like that, and they set some other strategies. For understanding, I'll show you the various plastics under their properties used in this paper. We have 3 types of plastics. They are fossil fuel plastics. We know already about these plastics. Our plastics are from fossil fuel, like petroleum-based or natural gas-based also. Mainly petroleum. It is polypropylene, polyethylene, polystyrene, polyethylene terephthalate, something like that, and PVC, urethane. We have a lot of plastics. Its properties, their properties are high greenhouse gas emissions when production. And second one is bio-based non-degradable plastics. People may think bio-based plastics are degradable, but they are not. Some are degradable, but some are not degradable. Non-biodegradable plastics are biopolyethylene, biopolyethylene terephthalate. They have almost the same properties as fossil fuel plastics. It means it has high greenhouse gas emissions when production, and chemical and physical properties are similar. And third one is bio-based degradable plastics. It is PLA, PHA, and TPS, and they are called drop-in plastics. In the paper they mentioned, they have different physical and chemical properties from fossil fuel plastics. Based on these types, the greenhouse emission were different from the types, and they predicted by these types of plastics. And the result, of course, the result are different. And next one is, in this paper, they said 3 stages of life cycle of plastics. It is a production stage and conversion stage. Production stage means resin pellet production from their sources. And second stage is conversion. Conversion means to make products of plastic. It means like plastic, non-materials, plastic things like container or a cloth or something like that. It is called conversion stage. And EOL, or end of life stage, means disposal. It can be recycled or incinerated or composted. A major 3 categories they set as end of life stage. And the recycling has a lot of stages, like transportation. In this paper, the method part, if you have time, I don't introduce this method part in detail because it's complicated and long. And recycling process includes collections, transportation, sorting, separation, something like that, related to the recycling process. Landfill and incineration also. And they have 4 mitigation strategies and their combinations. In this paper, they mentioned like this, it's not realistic because they said 100% bio-based plastics will be produced for this setting of strategies. And the carbonated energy will be used. It means 100% of the renewable energy will be used for their goal. It's non-realistic, but for mitigation strategies and prediction, they used this aggressive, they set the aggressive mitigation strategies. For sources, as usual projection, they said fossil fuel-based plastics versus 100% bio-based plastics. And plastic supply chain, it means we need a lot of energy to transport and to convert resin pellet to the products of plastics. In that case, we have to use energy. As usual projection, current energy mix. I'll show you later. Current energy mix. What current energy mix? It means oil or natural gas and solar energy mixed. And strategies for 2050. decarbonization. It means 100% renewable energy, like wind power or biogas. And for disposal, as usual production, 100% incineration or composting. For their strategies, they set the goal 100% recycling. And growth rate of plastic demand 4% growth per year, but they set the goal 2% growth rate per year. And this is a very idealistic situation. Is as usual in 2015. And for understanding, I searched Google and added these things for carbon dioxide equivalent. You can understand very easily if you read this part. Methane has GWP. GWP means global warming potential is the heat absorbed by any greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. Methane has GWP of 27.9. It means, for example, a leak of tons of methane is equivalent to emitting 27.9 tons of carbon dioxide. It means it has 27.9 times power to emit GHG, greenhouse gas, CO2. Not exactly CO2, same to this amount of CO2. And similarly, a ton of nitrous oxide from manure, manure is the horse or cows excrete. For example, is equivalent to 273 tons of carbon dioxide. It means cows and horse have a great power to produce GHG gas. So in this paper or in other materials or papers, they use this CO2e because some products produce nitrous oxide, something like that, other gases, but it has great power to warm this globe. And for their production, we have to understand the situation as now. So the start point is 2015. In 2015, they analyzed CO2e for each polymers. For this projection, they hypothesis they included for this projection 10 fossil fuel materials and 5 bio-based materials. 10 are here. PPA means polyester, polyamide, acryl, and PUR, urethane, and PE, and PET is a PE, LDPE and HDPE. LDPE means linear low density PE, and PS, PVC, additives, others is they are 10. And for resin production, they for this from this part 61% of CO2e produced, and from conversion part 30% of CO2e produced, and end of life stage 9% produced. From this part, incineration has the largest portion, and for conversion, PPA, this part produces the largest part of CO2, and for this production part, to produce polyethylene, polyamide, and acryl, greenhouse gases produce a lot. So from this figure, somebody imagine we have to not to buy our clothes because it's fiber material. Anyway, to produce fiber material, clothes, to make clothes, greenhouse gases produced a lot. I mean, the largest. And before this figure, I have just three more figures, but I have to go to the supplementary because it has a lot of information to understand the figure. For this projection, I already told you fossil fuel is from petroleum, mainly petroleum. And with petroleum, we make a resin pellet, we produce resin pellet, and bio-based plastics, we set corn-based plastics and sugarcane-based plastics. And plastics types considered bio-PE, bio-PET. They two of these are not non-biodegradable, and from these two materials we can get 5 materials, but 3 are not. 3 are biodegradable: PLA, PHA, and TPS. They are biodegradable. And energy mix means for their projection, sometimes they say current energy mix means they maintain energy like 2015 usage, and low carbon energy means 100% renewable energy, not 50, not 70. They say just 100% renewable energy will be used. And then end of life management means for current EOL stage means here. For fossil-based plastics in 2015, recycling, landfill, and incineration 18%, 58%, 24%. But 2050, for these 3, 44%, 6%, and 50%. And bio-based biodegradable plastics in 2015, 2, 58, 24, 15. And 2050, 44, 6, 30, 18%. From this figure, you don't memorize. I don't memorize either. But recycling will be increased. Recycling will increase a lot. We have to remember that point. And 100% incineration or composting. It means just 100% will be incinerated or composted. And 100% recycling. It's very ambitious, not realistic. They know that, but for mitigation strategies, they set this goal. And plastics demand growth 4% is as usual because for 5 years, recent 5 years, it means 2010 to 2015, average plastics demand growth was 4%. So it's 4% should be as usual, and 2%, 4% and 2%. Sometimes some people think it's similar, but it's much different because it's it's we have, if you think 10%, I have 10, and 4% increase is next year will be 14, and from 14 another 4%, and from 20 another 4%, like that. In Korean, 봉리. You may understand if you think that, like bank's interest. Yes. So 4% and 2% is great difference. And this is global market share. We know already PE and PP as greatest percent, especially PE. And it is emission data of different conventional plastic types. For this fossil fuel plastics, at this stage, CO2e kilogram CO2e per ton will be produced. Production part, largest, and conversion part, second, and this part, smallest. It's fast fuel and bio-based plastics, and we don't memorize, but just remember that the difference is 3 or 5, 4 or 2 and 1. It means 1,000, 3,000, and 2,000. But here, bio-based means it decreased. I think we need to figure out just the difference, because we have a lot of numbers here. And for low carbon energy scenario, renewable biogas produces this kind of CO2e, but current energy mix here. The first part I told you, but I didn't mention this. 38% coal, oil, natural gas, and nuclear energy, 60% high, something like that. And is for current energy mix, and current energy mix scenario means we use current electricity mix. I'm sorry, it's electricity energy mix, and we use this kind of energy, or natural gas energy, or diesel energy. And for low carbon scenario, this renewable energy. And this is emission data under low carbon energy scenario. With low carbon energy scenario, this part decreased. It was 3, 4, even 4 or 2,000, but here 1,000, there are some hundreds under this scenario. And for each part, this part decreased a lot, but this part not decreased a lot. After this seminar, if you want to understand detail, you have to compare former table and this table together. And under low carbon energy scenario, of course, for bio-based plastic types, CO2e will decrease a lot. You can see this is minus value, because they compared and minus from former and later, then produce these numbers. And this stage, and this stage, and this stage. And we have to remember, for this stage, some figures increased for bio-based plastic types. And this is resin production percentages for these materials, global production and waste generation. We produce a lot of PP and PE. For this part, a lot of waste produced from PP and PE. We can understand. And from this table, the hypothesis is a 100% bio-based plastics will be produced. It means for PE, bio-PE 70%, PLE 10%, PHA 10%, TPS 10% will be replaced. Will replace for this PE, and for PS and PP, this kind of materials will replace for carbon-based materials, carbon-based plastics. And end of life of it means for disposal. As usual scenario is this for 2015 for fossil-based plastics and bio-based non-biodegradable plastics. For 2015, it is 2015, but baseline is this: 44%, 6%, and 50% recycling, landfill, and incineration, respectively. But for bio-based biodegradable plastics, 2015, landfill has the largest portion, but 2015, recycling has the largest portion. So we have a lot of situations, but we don't need to memorize all of that, but we have to remember 100% renewable energy, 100% EOL stage has a lot of detail, like this table. And it means for each feedstock means sources, we have for each part we have two scenarios, basic scenarios. The plastic demand for as usual 4% and 2%, and the predicted CO2 value is million tons of CO2 will be numbers as this table. So I'll just tell you about the difference. This part has the largest number, but this medium and this part is lowest. And for this number, main contents has the explanation like this. For each scenario, they have set 4 scenarios for as this figure and this figure. I'll tell you in more detail for this figure. This is scenario 1. Scenario N1 and 2. They set the goal annual growth rate of 4%, and estimations. They set these hypotheses or mitigation strategies. They use fossil fuel-based plastics and current energy mix, and projected AOL management. It means all are same, this one and this one, but projected AOL management is different. Do you remember? Supplement table, it was different, like recycling and landfill incineration, it was different percentage. And then on the abstract, as usual scenario, 1.7 gigaton CO2 will be produced, but because of the AOL management, will be the CO2 will be influenced. So 6.5 gigaton CO2 will be generated, and all incineration of all waste, it will be 8.0. It means this AOL scenario, it was 44% recycling, I told you before, but if all waste will be incinerated, the number will be increased, and all recycling 4.9. It means this one and this one is basic circle, and incineration, composting is triangle here, and scale is here. The scale is all recycling. This means incineration and composting. And for cone-based, 5.6, it means 100% cone-based plastic will be produced. Then 5.6 means here, this one is 5.6. And 100% sugarcane-based plastics, if the plastics is produced, then CO2, this amount, 4.9 gigaton CO2 will be produced. Here, the paper omit per year, but it means 8.0 gigaton CO2 per year for this year. The author didn't put per year. They think we understand well. And from this figure, we can understand all incineration for bio-based non-degradable plastics or composting for bio-based degradable plastics. It means this kind of in this kind of situation, 6.7 gigaton CO2 will be produced. If this important message says just one point. This point, 100% recycling for blue arrow, this scale. This is fossil fuel-based plastics, and this is corn-based plastics, and this is sugarcane-based plastics. Then for this projected AOL mix will be higher than 100% fossil fuel-based plastics. It means recycling is very important for fossil fuel-based plastics. If we recycle all of the waste, then it is more efficient to bio-based plastics in this situation. But if plastics will be produced by bio-based plastics, and bio-based plastics will be recycled, all of them will be recycled, then look at this scale. The CO2 will decrease. So this very important message. So this point, and just compare this circle and scale. And for the second scenario, annual demands is 4% same, and 100% renewable energy. I told you the basic vocabulary and concept, so I read just the main. Read this as I wrote down here. 100% renewable energy, on average 62% reduction from baseline. It means for these three kind of based plastics, from this 100% renewable energy, average for three, the CO2 will be decreased 62%. And if we use 100 fossil fuel-based plastics and 100% renewable energy, then it will decrease 51% from 60.5 to 3.25. And then 100% renewable energy, 100% recycling for fossil fuel-based plastics, corn-based plastics, and sugarcane-based plastics. Reduction of CO2 is 77%, 84%, and 86%. And the important message of this figure, absolute reduction of emissions of CO2 can only be achieved by combining aggressive deployment of renewable energy and extensive recycling of plastics. And renewable energy is very important. If you you can understand with this figure, for this these two figures, the hypotheses are 2% demands for plastics, 2% demands growth, annual growth rate, and current energy mix, and this figure for scenario 4, 100% renewable energy. Then for this scenario, we reduced already to 2%. Then under current energy mix, 56%. It means this line is 56% decreased from 6.5. And lower energy mix, it means lower energy mix, this figure is 100% renewable energy, then 81%. It means decarbonization of energy is very important. This figure and this figure already decreased from this figure because of this annual growth rate decreased. And for from this 100% renewable energy, the CO2 will be decreased a lot from this to this, and former graph to this, and from this to this is decreasing rate. And for fossil fuel-based plastics, 100% renewable energy, then the CO2 will be constant. It means 6.5. But 100% bio-based plastics and 100% renewable energy, then CO2 will be lower than 2015. And 100% fossil fuel-based and 100% renewable energy, then it will be decreased 51% from this figure. And 100% sugarcane-based plastics, 100% renewable energy, and 100% recycling, and reduced demand growth, it means 2%, then the lowest emission will be achieved. It means 0.5 gigaton CO2e. It will be lower than 2015. 2015 was 1.7 or 1.8. In the contents of the paper, they say sometimes 1.7, sometimes 1.8. Anyway, 1.8 or 7. But this kind of situation, if we achieve these strategies, the CO2 gas will be decreased a lot, even much lower than now, 0.5. So this message is that Drastic reduction requires implementing all of the four strategies examined already on precedented scale and phase. It means we have to implement very, very aggressive strategies. Then the idealistic situation will be achieved. And this figure breaks down of GHG emissions by life cycle stages. From this figure, we understand important 2 points. This is assumption. This is a projection. Under current energy mix, resin pellet stage, resin production stage for this fossil fuel-based and corn-based plastics production, this part emit largest portion of CO2e, but for sugarcane-based plastics, this part, resin production stage and conversion stage, emit a similar amount of CO2e. And under this energy situation, per kilogram, for these three kinds of plastics, 4.1 kilogram, 3.5 and 3.0 kilogram of CO2 produced. And the major point from this figure is this. This bar means from each stage, resin pellet production stage, conversion, and EOL stage, this amount of CO2 will be produced. But if we recycle of the material, this amount of CO2 will be subtracted because we reuse that plastics. But a second point is this. For fossil fuel-based plastics, if we recycle the plastic a lot, then CO2 will be decreased. But for bio-based plastics, look at this bar. It's very small. That means it's not very effective for these materials. And if we use 100% renewable energy, look at this figure. It's 4 points, and this is 2 points. Then, like something like 0.5%. So this 100% renewable energy is very effective for reducing greenhouse gas emission. So this figure is for this 2.0, 1.4, and 1.3 for these three. And for fossil fuel based plastics, this part emit the largest proportion of CO2, but for corn-based plastics and sugarcane-based plastics, this incineration will emit the largest proportion of plastics. So the summary is here. None of the four strategies can achieve sufficient greenhouse emission mitigation for absolute reduction on their own. It means we have to concoct all kinds of strategies. And decarbonization is very important, I told you already. And if we fossil fuel feedstock, it means we use fossil fuel plastics, then 100% renewable energy is very important. And that other 2 points is I already told you. That's all of these papers. Any comments or questions? No. From here. Any questions, please?
Well, not at the moment. I'm trying to absorb too much information in a very short time, so I think need more time to absorb it.
Okay, and for complete understanding of this paper, we have to read through in detail because the contents of paper is simple, but it has a lot of implications to get this projection. Okay, Sammy, did you, do you have any question? Okay. Please turn on your microphone.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Jung-soo, for the presentation. I don't really have a question. Well, I guess I do have a question, but first a comment. If you go back to slide 7 of your presentation.
Okay.
I wanted to focus more on the fact that under the important message for scenario 2, it talks about how the absolute reduction can only be achieved by combining aggressive deployment of renewable energy and extensive recycling of plastics. And I think this is a very important caveat in terms of making these suggestions a viable option for a lot of governments or entities that want to implement this sort of new trajectory in terms of dealing with plastics and reducing GHG, mainly because it leaves a lot of room for interpretation, because what exactly does aggressive deployment of renewable energy and extensive recycling mean, right? I think there's so much room in terms of calibrating what the magnitude of that may look like, and how that may be carried out in terms of like realistic solutions. And so one thing that was a little bit of a disappointment is not really delving into kind of narrowing the definitions of what these aggressive deployment or extensive recycling may look like, was a little bit of a concern. And another thing is it talks about this whole research really talks about and compares and contrasts the use of bio-based plastics and fossil fuel-based plastics. And I think one really important aspect that it doesn't talk about, or maybe it intentionally omitted because it's such a controversial topic, is that it fails to talk about the additives that are in these plastics and what concern that may bring upon when it comes to incinerating these things. Because I think oftentimes you could still be bio-based in terms of plastics and make out of corn, but the additives that get included in those things really determine, whether or not incineration can be a healthy way of disposing these plastics, and whether there are sort of like health implications that are attached to that type of method of disposing. And so I think that's maybe one concern of mine, and I don't know, how do you feel about it, or how does anyone else here feel about that? So I open the floor in case anyone has an opinion or thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any comments for her? Okay. From IWP, Ika, please.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also thinking about what happened with the incineration in Sweden, in the other countries, like in Asia, maybe the closest countries to practice incineration is Singapore. Like it's not really able to compare to what happened in Indonesia, as we are more than 17,000 islands here. But like the scenario is how is the waste to energy now in the global discussion? Because I was thinking like maybe that's gonna be the most many people produce bioplastic, but without the proper information, I think it's if we don't dispose it properly, it's gonna be end up like what happened now. It's just like we stuck in the same condition in the 50 years No, it's 26 years from now because the target is 2050, right? How is the waste to energy situation now? Because so far, I think on the last event on our ocean conference in Bali, I was sitting with a couple of representatives of Asian countries, but they against that. How is it going now about this waste to energy issue? Like it's very related to incineration things, right?
Mhm. For incineration, bio-based plastics produce a lot of CO2. You can imagine we have a lot of energy for burn the plastics, and it produces a lot of CO2 and sometimes toxic gases. For management of the gases, we have to set complicated very, very well designed industry
Facilities.
facilities. So it is related to higher energy. I mean, the incineration. And any questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, like Sweden, they've been practicing this incineration forever. Like it's just become an issue now because the residue goes to the South Asian countries, because that's what I heard when we attend the meeting in Switzerland in 2019 in Davos. Like they've been how many decades since they've been practicing this incineration, which is in fact it's a waste to energy, right? They make a heat from this waste, but the only problem with them, it was only the residue that they shipping. Somehow we found out that they ship the residue to the South Asian countries like Philippines and Indonesia. Like how is that practice? Why European Union can do that while we can't? We are on the Asian. Every time we try to practice, like even when the issue of waste to energy, I mean waste to energy is the terminology, but in practice it's gonna be the same, right? But European Union against that when it's in Asia. How is the lobby in terms of that? If we're talking about the global issue, because Indonesian Waste Platform is also actively participate on Global Plastic Action Partnership, GPAP, and I happen to be a panelist. That's why I raised that issue in the meeting in Davos, because yeah, I mean otherwise it's just gonna business as usual, and the scenario will be remain the same if the countries with the high population cannot find a solution. Like we're talking about one planet, right? So how's your comment on that? Even we're talking about the bioplastic, but it has to be required proper information and proper chemical or mechanical recycling, or the process further plastic for further process for those kind of plastic. And if we're talking about renewable energy, also to recycling batteries is also required lots of energy, because renewable energy not come for free. There needs to be batteries to save those energy, and the batteries lifespan is not super long too, and it's required quite high technologies to recycling those batteries.
If I may, we want to listen to the explanation of the speaker, because you're almost delivering a presentation. Thank you. Please respond.
For this paper, they gathered a lot of information from other sources and the researches. Just as they used the present information, and for each stage, they calculated along. Followed the result of other studies. So if we want to understand each stage, we have to track the calculation stage. But I think they used step-by-step calculations from various sources, and I don't know in details about the steps, but for each step, they suggested, presented the papers, related papers on this paper later part, I mean the methods. So I can't tell you in detail for each stage, but I think it's the current information and the knowledge to this result. Sometimes the result opposite from our common sense or knowledge, but I think this kind of prediction we have to understand. This is just they were people do this research for setting strategies, the goal for reduction. Of course, in this paper, they tell us already it's not realistic. It's just the future trajectories. So I think when you read this kind of paper, we have to remember that point. So I'm sorry, but not to explain the steps to get these figures, I mean, the GHG emissions. It's already 31, so we have to wrap up this seminar. We have APML meeting. Please remain on this link. And next seminar, could you present next seminar, Yening?
Yes, I can do it.
Okay, yesterday's paper, right?
Yes, I already sent out 2 papers.
Okay, I will circulate the papers for others. Thank you.
Thank you.
How many minutes?
Thank you.
Rest?
Like 3.
3.
The APML meeting will be like it should be 11:30. Well, it's already 32. So maybe in 3 minutes we'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Okay.
Be
Three-
back.
Okay.
If I may,
Thank
if I
you.
may.
Yeah, sure. Jerry, please go on.
I appreciate the speaker's presentation for today, and at least this paper will serve us some background in discussing this topic, especially well, it doesn't seem to work in most countries, even the Philippines. We have a lot of problems in, we have the open dumping sites which is burning all the time. So I think this paper, for purposes of academic and at the same time as not exactly evidence, but as a basis for calculating energy, at the same time the effects of this pollution caused by incineration, we will all be able to find some solutions in one day. So thank you very much for the info. I appreciate this. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
EP members, we'll see you in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
연습 북한은 오해 말 거야? 뭐예요?
이거 아직 그거 아니죠? 어제 거 아니죠?
아니 빅데이터
Hi, Gary. During the break, do you have like 1 minute? Jerry?
I don't think Jerry's there right now, Icha.